Every day when you log into ChumbaCasino.com, the ultimate online social casino, you get a free daily bonus. Imagine if you got daily bonuses in other parts of your life.
I chose French fries over loaded French fries.
I asked Stuart from accounting about his weekend, even though I don't care.
I updated my operating system without having to call tech support.
Collect your free daily bonus at ChumbaCasino.com now. And live the Chumba life. VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Media Derby. We've got an interesting episode. We normally start with a great episode, but considering the results this weekend, I don't have it in me to use that word. We're obviously going to be covering Man United 0, Liverpool 3, the 1-1 draw between Brighton and Arsenal. We're going to give also both of our teams a grade for their transfer activity, and then we're both going to share who we think our winners and losers of the transfer window this summer have been. But yeah, it will be an interesting episode for sure, and we may get a bit heated because I think there's quite a few controversial or interesting topics to cover this week on the podcast. But before we get into any of that stuff, for those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, drop your comments down below. Share your video with anyone else that you think might be interested. Obviously, we've got a 2-week international break now. So, they've got some time to catch up on old episodes. So just share them with anyone that you think's an avid Man United or Arsenal fan, or even just a football fan in general. And for those of you listening on Spotify, Apple, or any of the other podcasting platforms, please follow, give us a 5-star review. All that stuff helps us with the growth of the podcast. But let's get into it, John. How are you doing, mate? You all good? How was your weekend?
Yeah, I'm doing well, mate. Weekend was good. Very busy. A lot of activity. Played a bit of pickleball, bit of basketball. So I'm kind of still in a bit of pain now, but it was definitely a very good weekend. How about yourself?
Yeah, not as much sport, but also quite busy. Went out and had a few drinking sessions, went to a few housewarmings. There was a lot of alcohol consumed, so I'm also feeling a bit worse for wear, but I wish it was on the healthier side of things like you. But let's get into the games then, Johns. We won't spend tons of time on the actual games themselves this week, but we'll talk about the big topics that have come out of both the games. We'll start with Old Trafford. Man United 0, Liverpool 3. I have to say it's probably actually a bit of a flattering scoreline, not based on maybe the end stats or anything like that, or even based on the fact that I think Liverpool absolutely played us off the park to that extent. But yeah, just one team absolutely clinical, the other team absolutely clueless, and that coming together has led to, quite a comfortable 3-0 win for Liverpool at Old Trafford. We were saying it in the group chat, but the first half, it was honestly it was the quality of the match was so poor. From a pressing perspective, both teams did pretty well to rob each other and cause high turnovers, but both teams were so wasteful until about the 30th minute, around then, when Trent scores that offside goal that almost flips the game, and Liverpool realise, these guys are prime for us to just to absolutely smash them if we can take our chances and be a bit more clinical. And fair play and hats off to Mo Salah and Luis Diaz, because they pretty much just turned the screw for the rest of that half. And you went from 0-0, where I feel like both teams were probably quite wasteful, but I feel like that was roughly kind of a fair reflection of where the game was, to 2-0 in the space of 5 or 6 minutes, and totally well deserved. Casemiro had an all-time stinker, and we'll get into him in a bit. But I have to give credit. Salah, from a playmaking perspective, 2 unbelievable balls, one looped cross at the back post, and then one really quick Travella style cross into Luis Diaz, who finishes it really well. And yeah, you're 2-0 down before you can even blink. And second half, I don't even think we need to spend much time on it at all. Collier comes on for Casemiro, but not much changes. Starts the same way. Liverpool come, break, rob Kobbie Mainoo, and Salah scores a good finish. But we'll talk about Onana and we'll talk about Mainoo and some of the defending for that goal as well. And yeah, to be honest, it could have been 4, could have been 5. Szoboszlai was ridiculously trying to walk one in when he should have just tucked it away, and it would have easily been 4-0. And then after that, at about 75 minutes, it was quite what probably hurt just as much as a result was the fact that Liverpool just completely backed off and just said, here you go, now you can have the ball for a bit, give the 20-odd thousand remaining fans in the stadium something to feel slightly positive about. And we had a few chances. Xerxes missed a couple of real, I wouldn't call them sitters, but, a clinical striker would probably score both. And, that could have added a bit of consolation to the game. But yeah, it ends 3-0. Some absolutely catastrophic performances from 3/4 of our team, I'd say, or maybe even more than that, 4/5 potentially. And just, absolutely poor result. But what did you make of it, Johns, first of all? Did you think it was a fair result? And what did you make of both teams' performances?
I do think it was a fair result for Liverpool to win convincingly, but I agree with you that it definitely could have been more than 3. And on your side, it could have been more than 0, right? Because even though I think they really bopped you off the park, you did still get chances. And that was something interesting I kind of found about that Liverpool performance, which was it was dominant, but it wasn't as if they were completely shutting you down defensively. So, I mean, like the Xerxes, I think it was the header in front of goal that he puts just off centre and Alisson basically just catches. I think if that goes in, I think you see like a very different turn of events. And I think you see that, Liverpool maybe change up the style of how they're playing. But I think because of the fact that you weren't able to put those chances away, it almost let them take their foot off the gas even more. And they were kind of just like, you know what, just do what you guys want. You can't even finish the easy chances we're giving you. we'll just let you do whatever you want now. But overall, I think in the first half, you guys were decent. It's not as if you were like absolutely awful. And I think it just led to, it was really just big mistakes that were punished by two of the, I guess, most clinical players, particularly with Salah with all of his assists, right? And I think, just Casemiro got punished. And I think that's the big difference between the two teams is you guys make a mistake, they punish you and they score. They make a mistake, you don't do anything. You just let them get away with it and off they go. Overall, not a good performance. I think, the whole Trent kissing the camera and then after the game doing all of this, I think it just adds insult to injury, really. But I don't think there's a whole lot of positivity you guys can take from the game.
Nah, yeah, I agree, man. That's why I felt like, even though I was definitely on a bit of copium and trying to be positive after the defeat at Brighton, there are things from both teams that I saw where I don't think a narrow United win was like completely bonkers to predict. I think it was an unlikely result compared to a Liverpool win. I think you went with what probably made the most sense. But you even saw elements of, the potential for a result like that in that game. Like Liverpool weren't airtight. This wasn't a Man City in their prime type thing where they, absolutely cut you apart and then just hold the ball and toy around with you. I think I've as much as it hurt and it was a disgusting way to end my weekend. And some fans are out there saying, I've heard, on the Big Six and stuff, people say, oh, it was worse than the 7-0. That's absolute balls. It's absolute rubbish. It's not worse than the 7-0. Because you know what? The 7-0 is not even the worst result I've ever felt in some of these drubbings that we've had. There's been a couple 3-0s at Old Trafford where Man City have come and absolutely killed us. And it's been a training game. Those have hurt. and I'm not just doing this in the moment deflection thing to try and take credit away from Liverpool whatsoever. 7-0 obviously hurt. This 3-0 obviously hurt. But in terms of a performance, even in the 7-0, we could have scored a few goals at the beginning. Like there were like elements of Liverpool looking still a bit weak or a bit frail, and I feel like if we'd have taken chances at certain points, maybe the game could have gone differently. There's been some 3-0s where we've lost to City where there's absolutely no sniffs we've had in the game, and they've literally toyed with us. You know, and like you see the zookeepers like dangling a big old lamb leg in front of a massive tiger, and they're just completely playing around with it, and there's nothing they can do. There's literally zero they can do to change and affect the result. And I felt like that in quite a few Man City games. With Liverpool, I've always felt like we've been in them, even when we've taken batterings or lost. I think there's one result. I think we lost 5-0 at home one time, where I felt like that one was probably the worst result I've felt and seen against Liverpool. But even that, I feel like we had a few chances here and there. And in this game, we had a few chances, and we had some turnovers high up, like you said. And it was like a blunt instrument against like a zombie knife. Like it was, you give them the same opportunities and there's very different results. And so you have to give credit to Liverpool. They had the stardust to take those opportunities, and they thoroughly deserved the 3-0 win. But performances, I'll go through them real quick. There were there's only a few players that I think come out of the game with their reputation intact. I think Dalot was okay. I think De Ligt didn't play that badly until midway in the second half, when I think he started to lose a bit of composure, and it also looked like he lost a bit of energy. And I think the Maguire substitution, while I was annoyed by it, when I watched the game back, you did start to see De Ligt like give away passes, look a little bit like ragged in that point. So I kind of understand it. So I've got a bit calmer on that substitution, but it doesn't look good, obviously. But I think De Ligt was okay. I think Mazraoui wasn't terrible in the same way as Dalot, but positionally, I think there's a huge problem with pushing both of them that high. I think that's obviously, there's that clip of Arnie Slot out here talking about how he exposed that to win the game, which, all Liverpool fans are creaming over big time. And it's fair though. Like, if you watch back the highlights and everything, like Roy Keane said it before Arnie Slot came in. He's like, what the heck are the fullbacks doing going that forward? Him and Gary Neville were literally arguing, and Gary was like, yeah, we would have done that in my day. And Roy was rightly saying, no chance, Gary. There's no way you and Dennis Owen would have been bombing up the way that Mazraoui and Dalot were. And I have to agree with him. I don't think that's what would have happened. So, yeah, I don't think Mazraoui would get absolutely slaughtered for this, but he didn't have his best game. And then, all-time stinkers, Casemiro, I think it goes without saying. I can't see how he can play for us again. He's had so many poor performances in the last 12 to 18 months, but I felt like that was just that was a cherry on top one to give away. Basically, I mean, the 2 goals don't happen if he doesn't drop on the floor for the second one and do like a ridiculous pass for the first one. Obviously, there are other people to blame afterwards, because it's not just like he does that in front of the goal mouth and we can see the goal. Sandro didn't have a good game. He was poor. Onana, I feel like, can do better for definitely the third goal. And I'm sorry, if I have a world-class keeper, I might be expecting something to happen for the second goal as well. But he's just not that. He's not a goalkeeper. He's an outfield player playing in goal. And Kobbie Mainoo unfortunately had a poor game as well. He got bullied by Gravenberch, and he got robbed by McAllister for that third goal. That there's some games, and we talked about it in the Euros, we talked about it in some of his top performances, where it looks like he is playing at his own pace, and like he's able to do that within all of the madness around him. In that game, boy, it looked like he was off the pace. Like the pace that he was playing, the pace that he was making decisions, it just felt so slow. And it felt like everyone else around him in the Liverpool midfield was just going at 100 miles an hour. And he just wasn't able to keep up with it. And it's probably the poorest performance he's had, which hurts to happen in such a big game. But yeah, poor man, absolutely poor. But yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything to any of that and stick the knife in on any of our players. But yeah, I think it's just one of them ones, really. There's not many players that you could say anything positive about.
Well, so I wanted to get your thoughts on like the Rashford and the Xerxes performances, because I've kind of heard two different things about both of them. Obviously, the crowd was booing when Rashford didn't come off, and then Ten Hag's come out and said like he created two of our best opportunities. Obviously, Xerxes didn't create the opportunities, but he was in the right position to be able to capitalize on them. Unfortunately, he didn't. But I've heard differing opinions from different fan bases on the performances from those two. What did you make of them?
So Rashford's one is quite hard to analyse because obviously, yeah, he did create two chances, but those two chances came after the substitution happened, and I think that's the reason why the fans were so upset in the stadium. So I think people need to, I've watched a few other content creators make that distinction. I think it's important to make. I don't think he had a poor. Like he wasn't the worst attacker. I'll put it that way, Rashford. I feel like what frustrated everyone was he didn't take players on, and he turned back on every opportunity when he had a chance to run into space and attack it. And this is not the first game that he's done that. There were clips going around about him doing the same at Brighton. There were clips going around again of him doing the same against Fulham. And I think we're at a point now where Rashford if he doesn't have a worldie, you're going to have people online coming for him and baying for blood. I'm not like that after that game. I don't think it was his worst game. I feel like he was tracking back. He was doing some of the stuff that we were asking him to do last season that he didn't do. I felt like he did put in effort. I just feel like he did not attack, and he didn't offer us anything in the attacking third. And even the stuff where people, Ten Hag or whatever, saying he created our chances, those are from crosses. And actually, that's positive for me. I'd like to see Rashford cross it more. So that is a sprout of positivity. I'm not going to dismiss that as something, rubbish that Ten Hag's saying. Amongst all the rubbish that he is actually saying, I think that's probably the only thing where I'm like, all right, fair enough. That's not terrible. And I actually feel like that might be good man management to try and get something out of Rashford. But I'll be honest, we could do that after every performance, unless Rashford has scored a couple of goals and had an absolute worldie. People are going to be onto him. That's just how the dynamic seems to be between the fans and him right now. Xerxes, have to be completely honest, all-time stinker. He looked really poor. He looked slow. He looked heavy, bro. I don't know if you thought this when you were watching it, but he just looked heavy. And because of that, he's kind of similar. I put him in a similar category to Mainu. It looked like he was too slow for the game. Like things were just happening very quickly around him, and he was just. It just looked like a slow, lumbering player who just didn't know what to do, where to lay it off, when to come deep, how deep to come, when to stretch the play. And then when he got the chances, I'm not even on to him about the chances because he's openly kind of done his Gabriel Jesus impersonation and said, I'm a 9.5. It's not all about scoring goals. He's basically come in and done that already. So I don't have the expectation he's going to be an out-and-out striker, like, an absolute gunman. I expect he's going to be more of a playmaker, striker, but I do expect him to score at least one of those chances, so it's disappointing. So I'm going to be honest, he had a really poor game, and it looks like he's just not fit and ready. And that might explain why Ten Hag hasn't been playing him, because I'm not surprised we've gone for a double false nine with Mount and Bruno, because both of those two players, like before Mount got injured, he looked lively, right? The quality wasn't there, but he was chasing, he was harrying, he looked fit. And can't say that about Xerxes, man. I thought he had a poor game. I would say he was the poorest of the three new signings, and De Ligt was probably the best out of the three, because I think there were moments in that first half where De Ligt was doing really well. one-on-ones. He was like basically, hold the door. He was the one holding it back when Liverpool was starting to build pressure. So I think he probably played the best, and Mazraoui somewhere in the middle. But yeah, I don't know. Rashford one's is a curious one. I think I would imagine you've got a similar opinion on Xerxes, but I don't know how you feel about Rashford.
No, I mean, I agree with most of what you said. I think, generally speaking, Rashford was not as bad as he has been previously. And I think overall, if you look at the chances he created, he was probably one of your better attackers. And that just kind of goes to show how bad you were attacking-wise in that game yesterday, if Rashford was probably your best attacking threat. And I agree with you on the kind of gun-shy aspect to him. I definitely agree with you. He just doesn't seem to be the guy that we came to know back when he was banging in goals, 20 a season or whatever else, because that was when he was just kind of like, it doesn't matter what the situation is, he's going to come at you and he's going to shoot. And you better hope he doesn't get past you, and you better hope he doesn't put it in the bottom corner. And that was what we kind of came to love about him, is that he was like unpredictable, extremely explosive, and, maybe not, I'm not going to say erratic, but, like he had some absolute world-class behavior in him whenever he needed it, right? Or every now and then. And I think now he just kind of looks more like Jack Grealish, he's like Jack Grealish, but without the system that Pep's doing. So it's weird that he's just become so passive almost when he came onto the scene. He was such an attacking player. So I agree with you about Rashford, and this is why I believe it's so much to do with his mental and not really to do with anything else. I think it's very clear to me that he is somebody that is relatively emotional, I guess, and that emotion can affect how he plays. And I think that, everything that's been happening at Man United, everything that's been said about him and about the manager, about the team, I think it massively affects how he plays. And I think he maybe gets in his head a bit too much, and then that affects how he plays on the pitch. And I think that's probably why Erik ten Hag is coming out to try and put an arm around him. I think, generally speaking, Ten Hag has tried to treat him in somewhat of like a fatherly way, right? Like, not just in a good way, but also in a bad way. Right? Like, if he does something wrong, if he's late to training, you're not starting, and I'm going to tell everyone that you're not starting. And if you apologise, we'll move on. But at the same time, when he's having a bad period, Ten Hag comes out and says, he's a good player, he's a great player, we have to play him, etc., etc. So I think he gives him a lot of confidence, but I just don't know what it's going to take. I think really he just needs some fan love. And I think he's probably received quite a lot of it and not really been able to do very much with it. But I think at this point, all of the negativity around him in the fan base, I think is just like a downward spiral for him. He's just going to keep getting worse and worse. And I don't think he's got what it takes to break out of it by himself. So it's a shame about him. I think Xerxes, he just looked off, he just looked like he was used to playing in the Eredivisie or playing elsewhere. It didn't look like he was, or the Italian league or wherever else. He looked like he was used to maybe playing in a slightly slower game, and he probably wasn't expecting. Konate and Van Dijk are not the two centre backs that you really want to come up against when you're in a new league, particularly because they're so aggressive. I think both of them are very aggressive centre backs. So I think it makes it harder for him, but I do agree with you. He kind of looked laboured. It looked almost as if he was wearing ankle weight sometimes. And I'm not sure if that's just kind of his style and the way that he runs and the way that he plays, but you really need to have a pacey threat or some sort of physicality to really worry Van Dijk and Konate. Because let's be honest, Van Dijk and Konate are two of the stronger centre-backs in the league and also two of the faster or quicker centre-backs in the league when they get going. So the only way that you're really going to push them is being like a Haaland, where you're kind of a bit of both, where you're an absolute monster physically and you can also run pretty fast when you hit stride. Or you've got to be like a Ollie Watkins, where you're just never going to let them rest. You're going to sit on their shoulder all day, faster than them, also pretty strong and a clinical finisher. And it just didn't seem like he had any of those things that were required to really give them give them any kind of worry. So, I'm not going to, I think the jury's still out on him. I think it's really harsh to judge him off of playing against two of the, the better centre-backs in the league, especially one of the, I would say up there with Saliba as the best centre-back in the league in Van Dijk. I think it's not fair to judge him just based off of this game. I think if he puts away one of those two chances he has, we speak differently about that performance, right? But the fact that he just no, I mean, not like we're not going to say that he was world class. I'm not saying anything like that, but with a striker, you've always got the opportunity, no matter how poor you play, if you put away a chance, you've done your job. And I think
you can rub things out. Yeah.
Exactly, you can rub things out. You can be a bit revisionist because that's really at the end of the day your job. And that's the issue with these 9.5s is that your main job is to score. If you don't do that, even if you do everything else perfectly, you can never be above an 8 or above a 7.5 even as a striker. You have to score. You're never going to find a striker that has a 10 out of 10 performance without getting on the score sheet or getting about like three assists. So with this whole Xerxes, Gabby Jesus BS, yes, great. You don't have to be a goal-scoring striker to be useful to a team, but you best believe that if your team needs a goal-scoring striker and you're the only candidate, that if you can't do it, you're going to get crucified for it. And this is where I kind of don't understand where Xerxes and Højlund fit in, because I'd say Højlund's probably more of a gunman than Xerxes, right? But the best, in my opinion, combination would be to be able to play them together. I think like Xerxes could probably play off of Højlund well, create chances for him, score his own couple of goals here and there, and really try and turn Højlund into like a machine. But I don't know if that fits into your system. So now it almost worries me, like, what is Xerxes' job going to be? And does he actually fit his play type, his play style into what you're trying to do? Because right now I can't see it. Maybe Ten Hag's trying to get to something very, very slowly at snail's pace, eventually with a play style. But I kind of worry sometimes where Xerxes is going to fit into that. And I think yesterday was a pretty good example. If he's not going to be a clinical gunman, what help is he going to be against these big teams and against some of these matches where you're going to have to start winning them if you want to be a good team, right? If you want to be a top 4, top 2 of Premier League winning team, you have to win these games. So that kind of just worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, and I don't disagree. I think with the Rashford thing, just my last 2 pence on this is just, I agree. I don't know if it's even recoverable with fan love, because I think what's really broken it looks like what's broken him is he built a whole image of himself, and his PR company and his family and whoever built a whole image of himself around what he was doing and all the amazing work he was doing. And it kind of feels like people have seen through that, or that veil was dropped, and people are seeing some of the like unsavory bits about him, maybe, or maybe some things about him that are still in progress, a work in progress. Because as much as people joke around and, we always act like the same with Jesse Lingard, pretend like he's still 19 when he's like 27 or something. He's still obviously growing up, like in everyone, in front of everyone's eyes. So I think that might be the thing. I think that's causing difficulty for him to find and regain his form again, because I do think he kind of feels very much exposed now. A lot of United fans feel like they know the truth about him, both on the pitch and off the pitch, and I feel like it might just not be repairable. I don't know. I think the longer this kind of stuff goes on, that might just be the case, and the more and more credence I think goes into the argument that he needs a fresh start for himself. I'm not even talking about us, like, getting his wages off the books or anything like that. Not even from a Man U fan perspective, just from a general football fan watching the situation, looking at the situation. I think that might be the only solution. And it's hard because he's obviously a big United fan, and it's hard for a lot of United fans who do still back him, because he's given us some good moments. Obviously not the pinnacle moments that we're looking for, but in this down period, he's played his part for sure in some of the trophies that we won, especially during the Mourinho era. Some of the performances during the Oli era. He was that Van Gaal era with him and Tony Marshall coming up together. There was some beautiful moments, but that might just be, where we're going with that, and there just might not be a way to salvage it. With Xerxes, yeah, I mean, I think that Liverpool game wasn't a good style for him. That wasn't a good style makes fights situation, like you said. I don't think his type of striker is going to really be able to hurt a Van Dijk and a Konate. Not alone. He would have needed like the wingers to come in and really, as a front three, he would have needed a lot more support from his wingers, and I feel like they were all a bit disjointed. So yeah, there'll be games where his style is really effective, and where him in combination with other people, especially from midfield and from out wide, will work. But that was not it. That was not it. That game, and yeah, he was definitely probably holding a bit too much timber, and he didn't look ready for such a massive game in a new league first start. Yeah, if there wasn't a Mason Mount injury, I don't think he's starting. So, I gave my predicted lineup last week. I didn't predict Xerxes was going to start. So that tells you everything. Let's get into the Ten Hag thing before we wrap up and go on to the Arsenal game. I think this is the biggest real talking point, really. I think we spent probably more time than we wanted to on the actual game itself, because I think it was pretty straightforward. But yeah, Ten Hag, God, where do we start? Man United are the second most successful team in the last 2 years, 2 trophies behind Man City. He's not Harry Potter. He can't make Ugarte ready to start. It's going to take weeks, if not months, I believe, was the quote. He's basically beefing with the journalist live in the conference again, telling him that, we've won the most trophies after City in this time. It's a mess. He's moving mad. He's all over the shop. And I remember what we said after the FA Cup final, and I think both of us were joking around, but it was born in some sort of truth that we wanted and enjoyed to see this kind of reckless Ten Hag come out and stick it to people, and telling Alan Shearer to do one and whatever. All of that was beautiful, because I do feel like there was, and probably still is, even to a certain extent, a bit of a witch hunt going on with him, like there was with Arteta in the tough times, like there was with some other managers that have had tough times. I think there is with Ten Hag, but boy oh boy is he losing his rag in front of our eyes. I don't quite think it's a Rafa Facts type. He hasn't had a Rafa Facts type moment, or Kenny Dalglish, I'd love it type moment, but he's on the ropes, mate. He's absolutely. He's. I don't know how much longer he's got in him, and I think I can't say this with certainty, because I don't think we've really seen Ineos make moves with the manager at United yet. But I think this period between this September international break and the next international break in November, if he doesn't come out with, I don't know, 9 points out of 12, or whatever, maybe he'd be allowed one tough result. But if he doesn't come out with a huge chunk of points from it and good performances, I have a feeling Ineos might pull the plug in that November international break, because that's the last real opportunity to do it before you get into the winter schedule where things go mad in terms of games. So that's just my theory, and I've got to be honest with you, I would lose no sleep now. I'm not going to do the Ten Hag in and out rubbish, but I would lose no sleep if he left, because the performances are absolutely abysmal. The results are all over the shop, and still too many bad results in a short space of time. And then he's coming out and talking absolute waffle in the press conference, and there's very little I can imagine a Ten Hag in person would have to back him. So yeah, I think by November time we'll all be shouting rude, and I won't feel an ounce of guilt shouting rude when it does happen, because this is not meant to be. This is not progression. I'll be real, and the trophies can gloss over some of that, and it's good banter to throw at you guys and Liverpool fans and other people. But let's be honest, there's no signs of. There's not big enough signs, I think, of progress at all. And the fact that I have to come on the podcast nearly every week and try and say, no, there is a style of play, and I do see a difference, but the results are still. And there are people out there saying that we're still playing the same way, even though I don't agree with them. That tells you how minimal the changes have been. And I'm sorry, in year 3, you shouldn't be seeing minimal changes. You should be seeing substantial growth now. You know, as much as I fight with Arsenal fans about the whole Arteta was different, you saw the good signs early days, and I don't believe you did see the good signs early days. I believe it really did come at the back end of year 2 into year 3 where you actually saw good signs. For me, at least still, you saw good signs in year 3. What can I say? Apart from lifting trophies, there's been good moments. But in terms of signs of developing the play, I feel like we started badly, improved quite quickly, and then have regressed like at a very consistent rate and progressively got worse in terms of our form and consistency. And I listened to someone put it, who I think put it the best. A manager's job is to enhance the players' qualities and hide their weaknesses to form an effective team. And Ten Hag seems to be doing his best to minimize players' qualities and highlight their weaknesses. Because there's part of me that does think if I'm Casemiro, I'm livid with him, because he's put me in a system where I'm getting exposed week after week, and people are out here saying I'm kebab boss man and I shouldn't be playing football anymore. And I'm a Champions League winner. I get part of the thing what his wife did by sticking all the trophies there. You know, he's a well decorated, one of the world's best DMs we've had in the last 25 years or whatever. And he's out here looking absolutely useless, like Sunday League level or lower. And the part of that is maybe him being over the hill, but the other part is that system stinks. You know, it just doesn't work. And unless you've got two prime Kantes in there, it's never going to work. So you have to put that at the manager's door. So I can't rant and waffle and lose my mind over it more. That's just is what it is. And like I've seen a few other content creators say, we don't need to be out here chanting Ten Hag out. He's doing his own job of getting himself kicked out. And there's no one that needs to doubt him to join the cause, is what we all seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you about pretty much everything that you said. I think he's showing everyone a masterclass on how to lose your job. I think, you know, the first thing I'm going to point out is it's all well and good making jokes and saying Harry Potter this and Harry Potter that when you just won a game. You know, I'm thinking now like when Ange went on Sky Sports and said that, you know, it's more like a nightclub than it is a fortress. It's all good, you know, fine saying those things when you're winning, because people then, it just, you know, it makes you more lovable. Everyone gets on your side because they realize that you haven't got a stick shoved up your ass and, you know, you can have a bit of a joke. You just get battered 3-0 by Liverpool, arguably your biggest rivals. I know obviously City are in there, but really historically, Liverpool are your biggest rivals. Talking about Harry Potter, man, like as much as like it makes his analogy made sense in that he's not a magician, he can't work miracles. It's just not the time, and this is where it's almost as if like he's out of his depth in managing a club of this size or managing in a job of this importance, because that's just not the joke that you make at the time, and it's also not the. It's not the comment to make when you've just lost to Liverpool. We've won the most trophies under Man City, who are also your biggest, you know, some of your biggest rivals, like geographically speaking. We've won the second most trophies behind them. Like, you've just been slapped by Liverpool 3-0. That's not the time to show off what you've done and what what you've proven to yourself or to the team. And I think this is a great way to get more and more people against you. I think the media already have, you know, the propensity to be against you because you're a Man United manager. If you don't do well, particularly, they're going to love coming after you because it's great clicks and great views for them. That's number one. Number two, you've had now numerous bust-ups, whether they were your own fault or the players' fault, with high-profile players that a lot of people have love for in one way or another, right? You add those two things together and you have a recipe for fans not liking you, and you have a recipe for the media not liking you. You then add to that you don't really get results outside of, some big wins. And I'm not going to call them flukes. I think you deserve to win those games. But I mean, like some big wins here and there. Outside of that, you're not getting results. So you've got three of probably the worst signs you could have about trying to keep your job in England. Because let's be honest, if the media don't like you, it becomes that the fans don't like you pretty quickly, right? If the media don't like you, you think, Ineos and whoever else is not reading all of this stuff. They're reading it too. So the likelihood is the board is not going to like you eventually too. If the fans don't like you, the board's definitely going to pay attention to them because that's who lines their pockets. And the media is going to pay attention to the fans as well. So it's just like you can't keep any one of those three happy, right? And then on top of that, there's rumors of like certain people in the squad not liking you either. So you've got basically the fans, the ownership, the media, and your own players all not your biggest fan. There is no way you're keeping your job. And as much as like I don't like to disagree, like to agree with Jamie Carragher, I think it is pretty clear that he's going to lose his job in the next couple of months. And I can't necessarily blame anyone for that happening. Right, I would love to come out and say, "Oh, the media suck. It's all their fault. Oh, the fans should be more patient. Oh, the ownership should be more patient. Oh, the players are just being divas." I'd love to come out and say all of those things. But at the end of the day, there's no smoke without fire. So, if all of these
take a miracle,
if all of these four are not liking you, your days are numbered. And the whole Rude thing. Man, I'm not saying there's a conspiracy going on, but it would be really, really convenient that Rude comes in to be the caretaker manager immediately after Ten Hag leaves. And we'll probably look back and say, oh, that was writing on the wall. Maybe they didn't fully get him in only because of that, because he's also a Man United legend, because he's also can contribute from a coaching perspective. But there's going to be a big old conspiracy that, Ineos knew that he was going to have to get sacked and they were just going to line up Rude in the meantime.
Yeah, I mean, you could have said the same with the previous assistant coach setup, and either Van der Gaag or McLaren would have had the chops to come in. I think people are overblowing the Rude thing a little bit. Like, obviously, he's been a manager recently, so if things go wrong with Ten Hag, he would probably be the one to come in. I mean, it could be Rennie Hack too. He's been a manager as well. So either way, they've got cover. I feel like that's quite normal in the assistant manager like setups and stuff like that. A lot of them have either dabbled with being coaches or have been full-time coaches themselves. But no, I agree with you. The only thing I will say is some of those elements, when they're all in combination, basically write your death sentence. Some of those things aren't guaranteed death sentences, and you can get past them, or they can actually galvanize you. The meat and potatoes of this is the pitch. That is all it is. Because I tell you, the reason why I made the Arteta thing is not because fans always do that, although with the United and Arsenal, they have done it a lot because of the turmoil that both the clubs have gone through, and then now Arsenal's being used as like a bit of a guiding light for clubs that go through something similar. Arteta was getting hammered by the media. Arteta was getting like a lot of fans printing shirts and saying all kinds of Arteta out. You remember? Like you were one of a select group of people, of Arsenal fans that I know, that was still Arteta in when things were difficult. There are a lot of people that really thought he was a bum. And the thing that changed everyone's mind was on the pitch. And things started to click, and the decisions that he was making off the pitch, people started to just gloss over them. The media were forced to change their tune, and things changed. Because Arteta was not a media darling. He didn't come in like Klopp or Mourinho and everyone just kiss his ass.
Well, he's still not, just to be clear.
Yeah. He had to work for it, bro. He's had to really earn it from the media to like be somewhat decent with him, and they're still ready as soon as something goes wrong to jump on him. There's still some people in your fan base that are ready, even though you're doing well, to jump on him. The things that changed everything was the pitch. And I'll be honest, this is the difference between Arteta and Ten Hag right now. Obviously, you people on the Ten Hag side would say, "Oh, he's won more trophies," and sure, there are differences on that side too. But there is a quote that's going around by Ollie, and it's true. And I'm not saying it like Ollie's the oracle. It just happens to be that he said it. The true proof of a team's progression is how they're doing in the league. You know, you can have people win trophies and cups. There are things like cup teams, right? You guys at the back end of Wenger were getting progressively worse in the league, but still nicking an FA Cup here and there because you still had enough stardust that on their day you could pull off a win against a Man City or a Chelsea or whoever were good at the time. And that's literally where we are right now. We're getting worse as a team, and you can see that borne out in the league and some of the shocking performances. But on our day, we've got some players that can pull it off, and it happens every now and again. But that's not a sustainable way to develop into a good team. That's actually doing it the other way around. You're Benjamin Buttoning it and going the other way around. And while
I think
Ollie
it's just
you're
painting over the cracks. Wenger era is a great example, right? Like the Wenger era is a great example. Those FA Cups and whatever else would keep us all like, oh yeah, Wenger's still good enough, and it would keep the conversation going. But we were worse, and we needed a change. And I mean, I'm not saying I was a massive Wenger out person, but we needed a change of the guard. Like, you know, we needed a new person to come in. We needed a new era for the team. And unfortunately, Wenger wasn't really going to be the right man to lead us on further from that, right? But those FA Cups and whatever else paint over the cracks. And I think that's the thing with Ten Hag. Like, if you took all of those cups out of it, what would you say about your performances? What would you say about the team in general? You'd say that you're getting worse because you've literally gone to 8th now, right? So, from my point of view, as much as your fan base loves to hear, "Oh, trophies this, trophies that," if in the end it leads to a worse team in 10 years' time than if you hadn't won the trophies, I'm sure you would choose not to win the trophies. So
no, I would, because I look back on the Ollie thing. Ollie was 6th, 3rd, and 2nd, and I'm not saying I love that style of play, but there was a style of play, and there was clear progression. We were getting better. We were beating the bigger teams more. We were getting, and bear in mind, we were still getting to finals and semi-finals as well. We didn't quite get over the line, and we bottled it in some of them, right? And that was the thing, that Ollie didn't have that stardust to get us over in those big games, but he had the coaching set up, and we always smashed them, Carrick and McKenna and all those guys around Ollie. But it's been proven they're good coaches, and I think our results in the leagues and stuff like that, positions prove that they were coaching them quite well. Just happened to be people didn't like the counter-attacking style. And again, I look back at our fans and say we were idiots and snobs at that time. There's nothing wrong with being counter-attacking. And actually, maybe if we'd have kept going down that route, who knows? We could have maybe been in the title race playing that style. But Ollie chose year 3, and he had the balls and courage to say, no, we need to change now into a dominant team. And that's what derailed him, right? Because the setup wasn't built that way, and he had too many players that were the wrong style. And this team, I'm sorry, they're getting worse. When Ten Hag first came in that first period, the purple patch before the World Cup and slightly after the World Cup, basically leading all the way up to the Liverpool smashing, people weren't out here saying we had the best style, but style was starting to develop. It's almost like that 7-0 walloping just destroyed everything. After then, we literally descended into this results-based team. And nothing was about style, nothing was about performance, nothing was about any sort of coherency at all. And it just became, we need to get results. We need to get to the cup final. We need to win. We need to get to the FA Cup final. We need to, find a way to win rather than continue building a style. And I feel like that's all you need to know about a manager, is whether or not they persevere and they continue with their philosophy and they keep going. And we've had ample signs from Ten Hag where he said, I'm not going to play my Ajax football. We're going to be the best transition team. We're going to do this. He's been waffling for months, and we've skirted over it. But you can't keep skirting over the performances, and you just need to. A lot of United fans that still want him in, I think we need to just come to the realization that it's not happening, and it's not going to happen, and it will take a miracle for it to happen and continue. But anyway, that Man U segment was way longer than I thought, but understandable considering such a poor performance and all the Harry Potter waffle and crap that came out off the back of it. It was always going to be a long one. Let's get into the Arsenal segment then. Oh God, this might be long as well.
Yeah.
Arsenal won, Brighton won. First half was decent. I feel like you guys had a quick start, like kind of a la Arsenal last season. Saka had, was doing some good things and twisting up the left back. What's his name again? The young Brighton lad. I've forgotten his name. Who's playing left back? He had a really good start, and then you open the scoring. I feel like it was a decent goal from Havertz, chipping the goalie, and it continues building his confidence. So that's really good. The only kind of blotch on it was, I guess, about midway through the first half, Brighton started coming back into it a bit, and I feel like you guys got a bit, you lost a bit of your shape, got a little bit ragged. Rice comes in with the late lunge and gets a yellow card, which I feel like pretty fair. I don't think anything more than that. Second half starts, you kind of hit the same stride, and then the big incident of the game happens. Veltman gets a free kick in the corner of the Brighton half, rolls the ball out. As the ball's still rolling, Declan Rice flicks out his leg and touches the ball very minimally, but he diverts it in a different direction. Veltman, we'll get into the intention and stuff like this afterwards, but he comes in, completely takes out Rice's leg. I think everyone watching it thought the ref was coming over to give a yellow or a red or something to Veltman, but no. Chris Kavanagh comes over, gives the second yellow to Declan Rice for obstruction, and you're down to 10 men. And the game changes a lot. I think Brighton come into it way more. They build confidence. You see it. João Pedro scores the equaliser. Raya makes a good save, and then I'm going to put it more on Gabriel, but I guess both the centre backs were there and they didn't quite react quick enough to come in and stop João Pedro coming and tucking away the rebound. And then weirdly, Arteta goes to a back five at some point, and kind of makes it clear he's kind of looking for the draw, but then still you guys have the best chances. Havertz should score. He does really well, actually. It's a bit of a solo chance. He creates it himself, but doesn't have the finish to slot pass for Bruggen. And then Saka also spawns a bit of a chance, I think, off the rebound to score the winner as well. And it ends 1-1. So much controversy. Prime Arteta comes out after the game in his Disgracia bag, sounding off on the referee. A lot of Arsenal content creators obviously getting the violins out about the decision, Declan Rice, because obviously now Rice is going to miss the North London derby now. This is not just like bloody Ipswich away or something that you guys Southampton away you're missing. He's missing the NLD when we come back from the international break. What did you make of the game, mate? We'll get into the big incidents in a minute, but what did you make of the game overall? Do you think it was a fair result? And are you still... Because I was with a few Arsenal fans. Some of them were really disappointed with the draw, and some of them were quite happy that you got out of it with a draw, even though you had the big chances. What's your take?
It's a difficult question to answer. I think if the decision doesn't happen, then I'm not happy with the draw. I think we win that game 2-0, 3-0. I think we would definitely... Brighton had some chances, of course, and it wasn't like a complete drubbing, like we weren't dominating them or anything else like that. But I think we were comfortably on the way to winning that game. And until the decision, after that decision, we were, in my opinion, comfortably on the way to losing the game. Despite having those chances, I'm going to be honest with you, mate, they were very much counter-attack on the break chances that really Brighton will be unhappy about, because Brighton obviously were going for it. Right, like the only reason we really got those chances is because they were going for it, and we was just like smashing it up the pitch and trying to get Havertz to hold one down, right? And Havertz did really well. Like there's one, he did the touches that he had, like some of the stuff that he did was amazing, and he was really good in that kind of format of how he wanted to play. But that doesn't happen if Brighton aren't really trying to punish us, and they're only trying to punish us because we're a man down and we look shaky and we don't have as much of the ball. So overall, I'm unhappy with it. In the grand scheme of the race, I'm unhappy with the draw because we need to win those games, right? If it's drawing against Liverpool or Man City, fine. But it's Brighton at home. We need to beat them if we want to be the winners of this league. And it's the third game of the season. We've got about to have 2 really difficult games. We've got a run of fixtures that are really, really difficult to the point where I'm not even trying to put any Arsenal players in my FPL team, right? And now we've got to do this with the Brighton team, like with Brighton, which is, it's not an easy fixture by any means, but it's definitely not the hardest fixture we've got. We need to be winning that. So I'm not happy with the draw, but I understand why people would be happy after what happened, right? After Rice getting sent off. Fair enough, they go and score, and then it's real shaky from there. And then you kind of put the ball in Brighton's court to go and win the game. So I can understand why they're happy with the draw, but overall, I don't see how you can be happy about this, because we've lost 2 very, very crucial points here in one of our, I guess, mid to easy fixtures that we probably should be winning if we want to be a title winning team. So yeah, no, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, if you want to get into the decision itself, I can go off for another 25, 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's literally going to be the next question. The thing I will say, I understand the Arsenal fans' disappointment, like your disappointment in this, because, well, I know you said mid to easy, and you probably went on the harsher side of that. Brighton fall for me in a category similar to Villa, similar to West Ham, where you've dropped points in years gone by, and they've proven to be crucial. Like Brighton have come to the Emirates and won before, for example, right? Like Villa did last season, Brighton did, I think, the season before, which lost you the league. So these are that they're in that mid block, but they're at the top part of the mid block, where it's proven that Arsenal will have fumbled. That there's been difficulty in them. And for me, that's the one where if you're going to win the league, that block of fixtures is the one where you basically have to be flawless. Because those generally are the block where Man City are flawless. Or they really minimize their drop points in there. And for you to enter that first kind of game, I guess Villa away was the first game, but you passed that test, and then so quickly to come into this game and hope to see, a continuation of that, and to struggle is super disappointing. But all right, let's get into it then.
Also, bear in mind, right, that when I say that about Brighton, I'm not saying that they're a bad team. I think they definitely are a bit of a banana peel for a lot of teams. But I'm looking back at the results now. We haven't lost to them in the last 2 seasons, right? Like last season we beat them 3-0 and 2-0, right? Yep. The season before that we lost to them 3-0 actually. We beat them 4-2. And I mean, our head-to-head record against them is not poor. And I think at least in the last few games, let's say the last 4 games, we've got 3 comfortable victories against them, right? So I think generally speaking, that's why I put them in that category, because what I'm looking at is season to season, are we improving or getting worse, right? And last season versus the season before it, we were poor against the big teams. Like generally speaking, in my mind, we didn't do well enough against the Man Utds, the Man Cities, the Liverpools of the league, in order for us to really justify saying we deserve to go and win the league, right? But last season, you saw a massive improvement in that area, right? Our top 4 record was really, really good, right? So I'm looking at that and thinking, okay, that's where we're getting better. When I look at this season versus last season, I look, okay, the banana peel teams like Villa, etc., are the ones that are gonna trip us up, and then some squad depth issues, some issues here and there are where we're going to slip up to the teams like West Ham or whoever else, right? This season versus last season, I'm expecting us to do as well, if not better, than we did against these teams. So that's why I say that about Brighton. We should be going and beating them again, especially at home. So the fact that we've gone and now drawn that, and I know it's not a loss or anything, but we've drawn that game, I'm thinking to myself, okay, that means that we need to pick up on last season where we did badly. So we need to go and beat Liverpool, or we need to go and beat City at their ground. We need to go and do something extra over the line now to try and get ahead of City. Because let's be honest, if we finish with the same number of points as we did last season, we'll probably come second again, because Man City are an absolute juggernaut. So I'm looking at points tallies and thinking, how are we going to get more points than we did last season? And it's not going to be through dropping points to Brighton at home.
Yeah, no, I get it. But I mean, that's a glass half full, half empty approach, right? Because you obviously had that Villa game last week, and you're 3 points up on that result last season because you lost that game and you won that this season.
Yeah, but now it kind of feels like, we've taken a step back. We just did something to get us ahead of it, and now we've gone back and pushed it back anyway. So it's like I can have 1 week of happiness where I think, oh, we're going to be better than we were last season, and then Chris Kavanagh decides to pull his yellow versus red cards out and screw us over. Stupid.
You're 1 point up on last season now with this draw. Because you obviously you beat Brighton last season, you got a draw this season, so you're still 1 point up. But I get it. You're seeing steps forward, and then almost immediately the next week you've got a blow. But let's get into the big decision then. Declan Rice, second yellow card. He's going to miss the North London derby. I haven't watched that segment on Sky Sports when they get Dermot Gallagher on to do ref watch, and he basically comes out and pom-poms, cheerleads for all the referees. I don't think we've had the first version of Howard Webb and Michael Owen's Borth snooze fest on the Premier League channel where they talk through the decisions. But I'm gonna guess that this one will be included in that batch when they do. A lot of very strong emotions from a lot of Arsenal fans, a lot of obvious cries of this only happens against the Arsenal type stuff happening. It's a very contentious decision. That's for sure. I've heard some people out here saying the ball's rolling, so it doesn't matter anyway. I'm hearing some people say that, the consistency's not there in the same match, let alone, all the different referees, considering Chris Kavanagh chose not to give. I think there were 2 different incidents in the first half where a Brighton player kicked the ball away and Arteta was losing his mind because the ref didn't give yellow cards for them. I think the João Pedro kick is the blatant one that everyone's talking about, but there was another one as well. So there's lack of consistency there. And there's some people out there just saying they don't think Declan Rice actually did obstruct the play and meaningfully touch the ball in a way that you think deserves a yellow card. I can tell from your face and you shaking your head and reactions and your outburst just now that you're not too happy with it. But what's your honest take on it, John? Do you think, because some people are out there saying that's the letter of the law, you've got to do it. Like, where do you stand on this?
There's two things I want to say first of all that are unrelated to it. Number one is Arsenal fans that are coming out and saying this only happens to us and doesn't happen to anybody else. You're full of rubbish, right? It happens to everybody, unfortunately. But the issue is that people use that as like, because it happens to everyone, let's not complain about it. You have no right to complain. Letter of the law, it's his fault, right? You know that the referee's going to do this, so you shouldn't even give them the opportunity to, as if football isn't the most subjective game in terms of refereeing in the absolute world, right? Even with something as black and white as you think an offside would be or a handball would be, we've made it the most complicated subject that is so subjective depending on who you are. So don't tell me about this letter of the law, don't give him an opportunity, because you could literally run straight past the referee and accidentally bump his shoulder and get sent off for absolutely no reason. And then you'll say, but that's just because they're referees. So what should we do? Should we all just walk off the pitch or just stand on the sidelines and just wait and just do nothing so that the referee can't punish us for it? It's the stupidest argument I've heard about this, right? And I get the football fandom argument says to you, you shouldn't support any other team, even if, they're being screwed by the same thing that you get screwed by. But it's the stupidest argument I've seen, because let's be honest, we've all complained. Every fan of every team has complained at some point in the last 2-3 years about refereeing in the Premier League and the standard of it, right? So those are the two first things I want to say, right? It doesn't just happen to us, but at the same time, fans that are basically calling for us to not complain about it and that it's not a bad decision are lying through their teeth just because of the football fandom and the fact that they don't support Arsenal and they support somebody else, right? Because when it happens to them, they cry the same way and they want support from all of us. So what I'm trying to say is, if you want support from all of us when you get screwed, how about you show some support for us when we get screwed? Because at the end of the day, it's just bringing down the standard of the Premier League, right? And it's causing all of us headache, right? And it's contributing to being, I guess, let's say, the reason or the main reason why this league shouldn't possibly be considered to be the best league in the world, right? The standard of refereeing really is up there with bloody Sunday league football. It's nowhere near where it should be in terms of, the amount of money that is spent and the amount of people that are watching this game. So those are the first two things anyway. Now, in terms of the fact that is it a yellow card or not, blah, 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 blah. Anything can be a yellow card if you want it to be on the right given circumstance in the right game with the right referee there. So I'm not going to say, is it a yellow card or not? Because it could be, sure, right? It also couldn't be. There are many games where the exact same thing has not been punished. So I don't want to hear all of this, but that it says in the law that you can't do that, right? Yeah, exactly. The same game in this case. I don't want to hear any of that like, it says in the law book that this is how you can do it. This is not what you're allowed to do. Because all of those are subjective rules anyway, right? It also says that you should use some common sense. Also a very subjective thing to do. And a lot of referees apparently don't follow it. So I don't want to talk about that. But from my point of view, consistency is the biggest issue, okay? If João Pedro doesn't get it, if he doesn't get a yellow card for it, I can't remember who the other person is. It might have actually been Veltman or somebody similar that doesn't get a yellow card for the exact same thing in the first half, then you need to keep that consistency through to the end of the game. Whether or not that's the right way to implement the rule or not does not matter, because you need to decide at the beginning of the game or at the end of the game what you're going to be doing from this point on. You can't decide in the middle of the game. It's the same way we complain about yellow cards, right? A yellow card for a challenge in the first 5 minutes, they almost never want to give them, right? You could go and clatter the life out of someone and they're not going to give you a yellow card because it's the first 5 minutes and they don't want to ruin the game. But in the 55th minute, it's suddenly a yellow card now, right? It's the same BS double standard where you can, on a corner, you can literally spear tackle somebody and not get a yellow card, not get a penalty for it. But anywhere else on the pitch, it's a yellow card and you get sent off or whatever else for it. It's the same inconsistency we see among all of the rules and the implementation of of football in the Premier League, and it absolutely stinks to the high heavens. So that's the first biggest issue I have with it, right? Consistency. Second of all is common sense, just generally common sense about this decision to make, right? If you have set a precedent to say, I'm going to give all of you yellow cards for this, then you have basically relieved yourself of duties in terms of common sense, because you've said to everybody, it doesn't matter. I've put my foot down. This is what we're going to do. If you decide to go against it, it's you that lacks common sense, not me, because I've laid down the law to you and I've told you, you can't do that, right? And I'm the referee. It's on me. Then fair enough, common sense would lie with Rice and he shouldn't be doing it. But if you've blatantly shown everybody that this is okay in the game, and then you decide at one point in the game, in a very, kind of innocuous challenge that really doesn't make any difference to the game, you decide then to change your rule and give somebody a yellow card, then you can't say to Rice, you're the one that lacks common sense. You can say to the referee, where's your common sense? The fact that you can't remember 5 minutes ago you didn't give a yellow card for that same offence. So that's the biggest, the second biggest issue I have with this. Consistency and common sense. They ruin the game. You've now basically said to yourself, one team is just going to go on the attack for the last 35 minutes, right? This game is not really going to be all that competitive anymore. I know Arsenal had a couple of chances here and there, but it's not going to be very competitive. It's just going to be basically watching Man City play against Ipswich. It's going to be one team has all the possession and one team just gets 11 men behind the ball, or 10 men in this case behind the ball, and just, that's going to be the rest of the game. So you've ruined the spectacle of the game as well, right? We didn't come here to watch you, Chris Kavanagh, from Greater Manchester, grew up in a notoriously Man City fandom place. We didn't come to watch you, you silly twat. We came to watch the football. And I guarantee you, if you didn't give a yellow card for that, none of the Brighton players or fans would be all that arguing about it, right? Because you didn't give it to João Pedro and you didn't give it to Veltman in the first half, right? You didn't give a red card to Veltman for booting the life out of Declan Rice. If you watch that from 5 different angles, the ball was literally a yard away from him when he kicks Declan Rice. So if we're going to use common sense or delaying the game, booting somebody onto the floor and then getting them sent off delays the game way more than him knocking the ball half a yard away from you. So you're wasting your own time, and then you're going to come and complain and say that we wasted time. Because you've just literally leg sweeped him, kick the leg, Johnny, like this is fucking Karate Kid. And that's not wasting time. So it's all round a stinky argument, and everyone's just basically, contradicting themselves in every part of the argument that they make, right? Number one, the decision should not be made based off of the status or the situation of what had happened previously in that game. That's the long and short of it. Whether you're a Liverpool fan, a Newcastle fan, an Arsenal fan, whoever you are, that is not a challenge. That is not a decision that you want to see happen against your team. And you think fairly, if you were watching it in La Liga, if you were watching it in Sunday League where you didn't support either of the teams, you would say that is not a foul. That is not a yellow card. Whatever else, that is not a red card. So just take off your stupid, bias because of who you support. And just remember that we're all getting screwed by the same people whenever we want, because we won't call them out as a group, as a league. We won't come out and say, the PGMOL, you need to sack all those refs and import a bunch of refs from Italy or from Spain or from Poland or wherever else where they've got a better standard. Because it's clear we can only produce morons when it comes to refereeing in this country.
Yeah, I mean the recent sample sizes, I think, have proven that we definitely don't have anywhere near the best referees and officials in Europe, let alone the world.
Well, I'll give you an example. Let me just give you one example, right? The only half-decent ref that we've had in the last 20 years now has been given the job of running all the referees just because of how poor the rest of them are, that they can't find somebody that was better than bog standard to be the leader of the referees. We don't have no Pierluigi Collinas out here. We've literally got, if you're not shit, you can run the whole gaff. We don't care because we don't have anybody better than you.
Yeah, I mean, that's still an improvement. That's the mad thing, because they have like Mike Riley or something, who was an absolutely poor ref before that, who was heading up the PGMOL. And you know what? I know it's a sensitive thing because I don't think they're trying necessarily to make bad calls and ruin games, but I think it's just, we just see worse and worse examples of incompetence. It feels like every season. Like we're 3 weeks in, and this one particular ref has had he's gone back to back in the words of Drake in terms of stinkers, because he literally let Joe Linton clothesline Neto last week. Also, he was kind of screwed over by VAR with the disallowed Bournemouth goal as well, which should have stood, which they said was a handball. So yeah, he's been involved in a stinker last week, and then this weekend, it's just poor because, like you said, I think all of us were trying our best to get over the idea and get past the idea that, or come to terms with the idea, should I say, that consistency among all refs at all time is hard to get right. And I think we all have to try and be more understanding about that. But having consistency from the same ref in the same game, I don't think that's a lot to ask for. I'm sorry, I don't think that's a lot to ask for at all. I think that is the bare minimum, is that the referee on the day keeps it 100 with everyone and stays fair and even to both teams. And I know there's some people out here playing pedantics and saying, oh, what Declan Rice did is not exactly the same as what João Pedro or Veltman did. And so therefore the ref didn't have anything in terms of consistency to follow and whatever. But I'm sorry, I bunch up all of those type of little incidents, obstruction, dissent, all these different types of things into the same bucket. And so if you're not harsh on them, if you're being lenient on them, you need to be lenient on them throughout the game to both teams. And so I don't really care about this pedantic FC stuff that people are doing. And again, I think you're right. It's really just masking the fact that people are just being tribal, and they're just saying, hold that, because we've had this and now you're going through it and we all have to suffer together, and they're enjoying drinking Arsenal tears. That, I think that's basically all you can say about the situation, because the ref, he's had a stinker, and I do think there are people out there that are enabling this type of thing. Like, I think opposition managers, for example, I think Hertzler came in and backed the decision, and some Brighton players came out and backed the decision. Now, I don't think that helps the scenario at all. because now you've made it completely a subjective. It's not subjective anymore. Like it's just become a huge discussion point, and you're not helping further and eradicate these type of situations. You're actually adding fuel to the fire, because now Chris Kavanagh's going to walk out there in the next game, and he may not have reflected on his performance, and he may not have taken the steps to try and improve that he needs to be a ref of the quality to be in the Premier League. And that's another issue. It's not even like chastising people, but it's just saying and giving him the feedback from both sides. Because if the winning team doesn't say anything and it's just a losing team, there's always going to be that, sore loser tag. That's the reason why we should just ignore it. That's what, they do. Whereas I feel like this is just not a good example for people to see of the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think the biggest thing that I see is with teams, there's two different paths you can take, right? There's the path of, it's very clear that these guys are biased and that they hold grudges. Because I think it's pretty clear that as much as referees don't want to come out and say it, it's very clear that they have their favourites and their non-favourites, right? They have their players that they consider to be foulers and who get far more yellow cards than anybody else in the league, despite not really doing anything different from other players, right? It's very clear that they have those kind of favourites, and it's also very clear in terms of their favourites in teams and their favourites in managers. And I'm not saying that to say that Arsenal are the least favourite and that's why we get all these bad decisions. No, that's definitely not the case. But what I'm saying to you is, in general, it's clear that the league has its favourites as to who they let get away with things and who they don't, right? And in my opinion, it's more everybody they don't let get away with certain things, and then two teams they do let them get away with them, right? Newcastle, Man City, I would say, were the biggest examples of that, right? Newcastle get away with so many more fouls, red cards that should, or no red card that should have been a red card. Man City have got away with so many things in terms of Rodri and a lot of their play as well that they get away with it and nobody gets punished for. And my point is, the Hertzler thing doesn't surprise me, because what he's going to think to himself is, if I come out and crucify him, he's going to come back and get me later on in the season. Or one of his mates is going to come back and get me later on in the season, right? And it's very clear from all these referee shows that you see after the game that they're all pally-pally with each other. You can't be honest. Because if you could be honest, Dermot Gallagher would come out and say, you know what, he's my mate, but he was wrong. Because he would know that there's no backlash against him. But I guarantee you, if he comes out and says that, he's got connections with the referees still, right? They affect his livelihood in some sort of way. He's not going to come out and say that. And it's the same thing with Fabian Hertzler. He's under duress. For him to come out and say, that's a totally fine decision and I'm happy with it, of course he's going to say that. It's like they've got his wife and kids in a room somewhere saying, you know what, you better say that. Otherwise, you're never going to see these lot again. And unfortunately, that's kind of how they are. They're like a cabal, like a cartel that just runs the league. No one can say anything bad about them unless you get sued, or they come out and try and ban you or give you an extended ban or do whatever else. They make you stand up in the stands for all of the rest of the season, right? It's very clear, right? They're not an independent body from the Premier League. They get to come out and do whatever they want, and they've clearly got influence, right? So I don't blame Hertzler for that, because he's just trying to protect his team in the future from getting screwed over by the same rubbish that they're doing to us, right? But really, if we want to change anything, everybody has to come out and say, you know what, this is not good enough. Whether it's for my team or against my team, it doesn't matter, because I know you're going to screw me at some point else, some point in the future as well. It could lose me my job. It could mean the team gets relegated. It could mean whatever else, right? So the only time that anything is going to change is when we all band together and say, you know what, enough is enough. This is not on. And I don't think we're ever going to do that because of the fact that the Premier League is so tribal. But I just wanted to say that because I don't blame Hertzler for his comments or whatever else, because I can understand why he's going to do that, right? And that's why Arteta comes out and he's going to say, you know what, this is absolutely disgraceful, and he's going to have to put it on his back. And I'm sure he'll get sued again for it or whatever else, and he's going to have to go and get those lawyers back from last year and say that, no, I didn't say disgracia, or no, I didn't say disgraceful, I said something else, right? I was speaking German at the time. I didn't say anything, right? But yeah, I mean, we're going to need more support from all of the the managers who've been screwed by referees. We're going to need support from the players. Rice has come out and said, "Oh, yeah, it's a yellow card." No, man, stop being so noble. It was not a yellow card, and you should have been sent off. Now you're banned for the bloody North London derby. It's your first red card of his entire career, or in the Premier League. Can you believe that? As a defensive midfielder, it's his first red card ever. And it was given for that. That, honestly, that's a disgrace. Cool. That also stinks as well, by the way.
Yeah. I hear you, bro. I understand that it's frustrating. And, you talk about under duress. Declan Rice is his family were definitely tied up when he was asked those questions because he was livid. In real time, he was absolutely livid. Someone's come to him and said they've got your girlfriend and your firstborn tied up. Just say you deserved it, because there's no way he believed that. He was going off on one. So I hear you. It was poor, man. I do think, of course, some people can be harsh and say, obviously, Declan Rice didn't need to do the flick out or whatever, but I think that's extremely harsh on him, because you see how the game's going, you see how it's reffing, and then you take actions off the back of that. Of course, maybe that's a bit naive. Maybe the worst you could criticize him and say it was a bit naive, because he actually gave the referees more credit than they deserve when it comes to their competence and their consistency and their trustworthiness. And he shouldn't have, because I'll be honest with you, there's not a huge amount of evidence to prove that that's actually something that's a strong judgment call to make. But other than that, I think you've got to look at the referees. You've got to look at that group as well. The linesmen made a couple of shocking calls where they gave goal kicks when it should have been corners and stuff like that. So I think they overall had a poor performance. Chris Kavanagh might need to sit it out and go to the Vanarama for a couple of weeks to the Gulag to try and repent for 2 weeks of poor performances. But all right, let's move on to the last segment then. Special segment. Obviously, the transfer window has closed. United didn't do too much, although I think the Ugarte deal, it was very, very stinky.
You had a lot of outs.
But it was very It was very stinky of Ineos to push that Ugarte deal right to the window, because it was basically here we go on Tuesday and wasn't announced until Friday, just before the window had ended. So we didn't actually have loads of action on that day inwards anyway. Like you said, there was some outs. But Arsenal, you guys were definitely busy. You had a couple of ins on the last day, as well as a couple or 2 or 3 outs on the last day as well. So we'll give our verdicts and transfer grades on both Man U and Arsenal, and then we'll give our overall winners and losers. So we'll start, just quick recap. I'll do this very quickly. The Man United ins and outs. So we got Yoro in from Lille, Xerxes from Bologna, De Ligt from Bayern, Mazraoui from Bayern, Ugarte, like I just mentioned, from PSG, Sekou Kone from Gaydars, young Malian, and then Obi Martin hasn't been confirmed yet, but it seems to be going through the Premier League's ratification process or whatever, coming from Arsenal. The outs: Greenwood to Marseille, Camboire to Villarreal, Van der Beek for a packet of crisps to Girona, Forson to Monza, Fernandez to Benfica, Wan-Bissaka West Ham, Pelistri to Panathinaikos, Will Fish to Cardiff, Hannibal to Burnley, McTominay to Napoli, and Sancho to Chelsea. The Arsenal ins: you've got Raya from Brentford, which is obviously like a bit of a cheat deal because you did it last season. You've got Setford from Ajax, Calafiori from Bologna, Marino from Sociedad, Raza, Sterling from Chelsea, and then Neto from Bournemouth. On the outs, you lost Smith Rowe to Fulham, Norton Cuffy to Genoa, Lokonga to Sevilla, Tavares to Lazio, Patino to Deportivo, Kozia Dubry, which was a bit of a surprise youngster, to Brighton, Berith to Sturm Graz, and Nketiah to Crystal Palace, Ramsdale to Southampton, Nelson to Fulham. I'll start with you, Johns. Let's do Arsenal then. Let's go alphabetically. What did you make of the window as a whole, and what grade do you give Arsenal for this transfer window? Because I've seen some delusional AFTV Robbie. I see you out here giving them high marks, and then Turkish giving them very low marks. Where do you sit on this?
I'm going to give them a C+. And the reason I do that is because they are aiming at the wrong place, but the place that they're aiming at was good. Do you know what I mean? Right? They aim at the defense, so they're aiming at the completely wrong target. It's like playing tennis. They're hitting a winner on the court next to them. They ain't hitting a winner on their own court, and that's my issue with them, right? Because Calafiori is a good buy, Marino is a good buy if that's what you're looking for, right? If you're trying to improve the centre midfield kind of position, and Calafiori is obviously very good if you're trying to improve the defence. I just don't think that those places should have been the first place that we focus on. All right, I'm not going to include Raya and Setford in them because, as you said, Raya is already part of the team. Setford is not going to play, right? So I'm not really going to look at that. Maybe for the future, in 10 years' time, I can come back and say this is an A+ because Setford's the best bloody goalkeeper in the world, but I doubt it, right? So aiming at the wrong place, but shooting well, right? Because Sterling stinks, right? The only thing that makes that good, and the copium that I've seen from Arsenal fans, is that Chelsea are paying him bloody 60% of his wages, and we have no obligation to buy him. That's the only thing that is making this deal good, is because it feels like Arsenal fans, we feel like we screwed Chelsea over, right? That's the only thing that's making this good, because if you said to yourself, forget about the fee, let's just set the fee at mediocre or normal, whatever you'd expect, we would say, why the hell are you buying him? We don't need him. He's not that, or he's not good enough to fill the position that we need, right? He's not significantly better than Martinelli. He's not significantly better than Leandro Trossard. And he's just coming off arguably the worst period of his career he's ever had, right? The fact that we screwed Chelsea is the only reason why people are coping. So I think that one stinks. Neto from Bournemouth, I'm fine with that one because we're just replacing basically Ramsdale. I just don't see, in my opinion, I don't see that as an upgrade or a downgrade. I just think that's kind of more of the same. So overall, I'm going to have to give us a C+ because I just think Calafiori's an upgrade for us. Like, he is good. He adds squad. He adds depth. I don't think he's going to start. I don't think he's significantly better than Timber, but he's definitely better than Zinchenko in my opinion when it comes to defending. And then Marino is, he's probably better than Partey. Maybe I don't know. He's going to add something to our team in terms of being a unit and being pretty good. And he's just come off the back of winning the Euros, right? But I can't, in good faith, give them a high grade for this because where is Benjamin Sesko? Where is Isak? Where is somebody that we actually need up top of the pitch that would have put away one of the two chances that we got against Brighton last, in the second half after we got Rice sent off? Because it's the same old story. Havertz is going to go and score us goals, and he's got a pretty good goal record, but he didn't bloody put away that finish, did he? And get us out of a tight, tricky spot. So it's going to come down to the same thing at the end of the season, I reckon.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I also forgot to mention Fabio Vieira to Porto as well. But no, I hear you, man. And I think I would give Arsenal a C. So I'm going slightly lower than you. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because I just look at your team and I feel like your first 11 is probably around where it was last year. I don't think any of the players, maybe slightly improved, because I think Calafiori could potentially come in at left back. And my opinion of Zinchenko. I think that's a massive upgrade, if I'm perfectly honest. And I think once he gets used to the league, I think he'll be a really good player. And I think you can expect him to have somewhat of a similar impact to Ben White. So I think you've improved your first 11 slightly. But I will say I think your squad has got weaker. Because I look at Marino's good because he didn't really lose anyone from midfield necessarily. So, but I think the jury's out on him.
I think our attacking midfield and striker options are a bit weaker.
Definitely. And this is the thing. I'm all for, because if you'd have got rid of the guys that you got rid of, Smith Rowe, Nketiah, Ramsdale, Nelson, Vieira, Konga, Tavares, I'm not going to count the youngsters too much, but if you got rid of those guys and got a couple of people like top quality, like you mentioned, in to replace them, then I think your grade goes from a C to a B+ or an A-. It goes high because you've improved the first 11, but you've also maintained the squad depth. And I feel like what you've done here is you've got a very incremental improvement to the first 11. It's yet to be seen whether that improvement, Calafiori, is enough to get you over the line. I don't think it's a massive jump up. And then you've definitely weakened yourself more than incrementally. I think quite a little bit, especially in attack, like you mentioned, where you just don't have the options. Now, I'm not saying that those guys were great. I agree with selling them. So I think it's not a case of you've lost world beaters or anything like that. But I do think in that Brighton game, when you're drawing, or in the future when you're drawing a game and you need to throw someone on, you've pretty much only got one shot normally. It's normally the Trossard or Martinelli shouts, right? I don't think you're not going to have Jesus for a lot of the season. He's in and out injured a lot of the time. And other than that, I can't see the depth. You're going straight to youngsters after that. And that's worrying, man. Or obviously maybe now Sterling as well. But, you've said enough about Sterling. I don't need to give my opinion too much on what I think of him as a player at the moment. So yeah, I can't give myself. I can't give you more than a C for your business. But I'm not going to join in with these people saying it's a catastrophic window. It's just not. I think it's not what you guys hoped for when you're trying to bridge the gap.
Catastrophic windows as an Arsenal fan is ridiculous to say, because a catastrophic window is losing Van Persie to Man United, right? This is not, unless Saka comes close to United or something and getting Shamak. Yeah, exactly, right. Unless we lose somebody like that, God forbid, I beg, I'm praying to God that doesn't happen. Then it can't be considered to be catastrophic. We've seen so much worse. But I agree with you. I think we have incrementally seen a decline in the depth of our attack. I think man for man, 11 versus 11, we've still got as good an attack as we did last year, right? But on the depth side, I agree with you. I think we have declined slightly. Jury's out. Let's see if Sterling turns out to be, even 75% of what he used to be. Because if he did, then maybe that is an upgrade on Nelson, and maybe that is an upgrade on Vieira as well. Who knows? But based off of what I know now, the best information I have today, he doesn't look so great. So I agree with you. I don't think it is. It has been the best for our attacking depth this window. Joanne, I can't hear you.
Yeah, what a muppet! I was on mute. My bad.
There we go.
So we can cut. You'll have to chop that bit. Sorry, my bad. But if the only copium I would have if I'm an Arsenal fan is, you look at your rivals around you. Man City slightly ahead, Liverpool slightly behind off last season's performances. They haven't taken massive jumps to make me go as an Arsenal fan. Oh crap! We're in real doo-doo. Like, I think Savio, I'm probably in with Rory Jennings' shout of the predictions with saying that he's going to be a flop because he's looked like a Mahrez regen. So that's not looking good. But it's still one player. I don't think City have massively improved or taken the transfer window to kick on loads. And I think
unless Gundogan turns back into Gundogan of 2 seasons ago, because if he does, then we are all screwed.
Yeah, of course. But I think that would be. I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting Gundogan. Yeah, I'm expecting Gundogan to come in and just buff out the squad a little bit and be there in moments of need and stuff like that. But yeah, they haven't gone wild, right? Yeah. And I think Liverpool have obviously signed Chiesa and the goalie for next season. So
Man City lost Julian Alvarez, so that's a boon for everyone else as well, because he was pretty good.
Exactly, and so that's the reason why I won't be as harsh on the window, and I still think it could be a passing grade. It could be enough to get you there, but you're definitely going to be relying on the injury gods to not hit you, because it feels like Arteta admitted it. There are areas now more so than last season where it feels like you're a bit short, or could be short if something bad happens. But yeah, I'm going to go C, but I think C+. I get it. I think that's around a fair reflection, I think, of your business. Let's go on to United then. I'll start with this one. this is really hard to judge, obviously, off the back of the 2 defeats and the general vibe around the club. But I'm going to stick with what I'm seeing on this page, and I think we've had a B. We've had a B window, I'd say. I feel like we've addressed issues or areas of the squad where there were big glaring issues last season, centre-back being one, having to rely on Maguire and Johnny Evans every week was not ideal. And I don't think that's likely to be the situation this season, even if we have bad injuries, touch wood. I think we've got much more depth in that area. At fullback, I like Mazraoui. I think he's done well. I do think he's an upgrade offensively to Wan-Bissaka, but yeah, you saw in that Liverpool game where having a Wan-Bissaka maybe would have helped because his defensive instincts maybe would have stopped some of those situations. But that's the way we want to play as a team. So I'm not going to now lambast that decision, and we'll see with Ugarte. But I feel like getting someone in there with legs and who's a tackler and focused on defensive midfield is a good thing. And then, the youngsters, we'll see. Kone, Obi Martin, who knows what will happen with those, but those are kind of like minor rolls of the dice with youth players that could pay off in the future. Xerxes, the one where I go, he's going to have a lot of work. He's going to have his work cut out to catch up. But I think he's a good player. And I just think the expectations of him being a gunman and coming in and doing XYZ are probably too high. And you'll probably find when Højlund is back, Højlund will be the starter because I think Højlund's got more of those striker instincts that we'll need in certain games, and Xerxes will be someone that will come in and rotate. So I'm happy with it. I'm happy with that business. Of course, I would have maybe liked another midfield. I was talking about Amrabat as well, but I don't know if there's a way that United could have scored an A for me in this window. The only way maybe would have been to sell Maguire, sell Onana, sell a bunch of players who I think are not Man United players, essentially. And I don't think that was ever going to happen. So I feel like the business that they've done has been good, both in and out. I'm relieved to get rid of Sancho, and I'm never going to talk about him again, unless it's to make fun of him when he's at Chelsea, because he will be. Did you see his little goodbye message? Disgrace, mate. Absolute disgrace. Absolute disgrace. He literally just said, thanks to the fans, thanks to the club, good luck in the future. You joking, mate? You literally went to Dortmund after, being an absolute little prick with our manager, who, whatever we say about the manager, regardless, it doesn't mean now, even if we sack Ten Hag, doesn't make me go, maybe we should have brought Sancho back. Sancho's useless. He's not got minerals, and it won't change my opinion at all. But yeah, he's immediately become like the biggest Chelsea cheerleader. He's changed all his socials to everything Chelsea. He's basically just flipped overnight to be a player that cares about his club after being at our club for the last 12 months or 18 months, not giving two flying shits about the team. And actively, almost feeling like he's trying to antagonize the fans with some of his behavior and stuff like that. So, good riddance. I'm not even worried that he's going to bang. I've got to be honest. There's some players that we sell and you go, oh, bloody hell. There's even a part of me of Premier League when it got Tony Marshall, I'm a bit like, oh, you never know. He could come back and bite us. But with Sancho, zero worry. Zero
Clip
worry.
this one up, people.
Clip it up. Clip it up. I don't care. There is zero worry that he's going to do anything in the Premier League. And I'll caveat that with the Premier League. I feel like if he'd have gone to, where was the other team? Juve, or whoever was in for him, he could bang in the Serie A.
He works in a slow league. He works in a slow league, not in a fast one.
Yeah, he could bang in Serie A. He could bang in La Liga. He could bang in even in Germany, even in Bundesliga, even though sometimes it's a lot of counter-attacking. It's still, the players aren't as athletic as the Premier League. There is zero chance he's going to bang at Chelsea. And I've got to be honest, it's not only because of his lack of suitability for the league and the fact that he's an absolute yellow belly. It's because they've actually got good wingers. So if you think Rashford, Garnacho and Diallo kept him out, what do you think Pedro Neto, Cole Palmer, Madueke playing well are going to do. He's not going to touch that field unless there's an injury crisis or unless you're singing the Conference League anthem. So whatever. Good luck to him. I'm actually that's a lie. Not good luck to him. But I don't even need to wish him bad luck. I know what it is. Like, he's shit, and good riddance, mate. So yeah, I would give Man United a B. What do you make, mate?
I'm giving you a B plus because I think, I think Euro and Xerxes are the two that I'd be most worried about out of the ones that I've seen so far. Obviously, I haven't seen Agate at all, but Euro has the potential, in my opinion, if you don't get him back immediately and start playing the life out of him, he has the potential to become like a Malacia where you just never see him again, or somebody else that Tony Marshall where you very rarely even see him on the pitch. And I'm not trying to overdo it as if he's the most injury-prone person ever, but starting your career in that way and the way that we've seen things go with other players, I'm worried that he doesn't. He can never really set himself and get himself back. So I think he needs a little bit of luck, some good, medical staff, and then I need a manager that plays him for him to really kick on and be good at Man United. So he's the main worry I have. But I think outside of that, you've done an excellent job getting rid of a lot of crap. Because as much as you want to get rid of Maguire and not everybody else, you've already got rid of bloody 19 different players or whatever it is, right? And most of them are the crap that you wanted to get rid of at the beginning of the season. So the fact that you've been able to get most of them out and you've just got a couple of clingers on that are just dragging at the back of the car, just, hanging on for their dear life, that's all right. Because getting rid of that many players in one season or in one window can be negative. It can mess up the dressing room vibes. It can mess up a lot of the things in the club, right? We saw it with Nottingham Forest when they tried to buy like 25 people in one season. It takes a long time to figure that stuff out. So the other way around, losing 25 people in a season also can destabilize you slightly. So I think you've done a good job of getting rid of as much crap as you can, and you've done a decent job of getting money for them, right? On the ins, I think you've actually been exactly what I kind of told you before, outside of maybe one or two of those signings, which is don't go for the guys that are, the hyped up Sanchos of the world that are like gassed up and you're going to have to pay so much money for them and you're going to just ruin your budget and end up being massive divas that are crap. Go for the smaller players, the ones that people aren't focusing on quite as much. Try and go and get them, or the ones that are a bit down on their luck, go and try and get them and make something out of them. I think you've done that for the most part. I'd say outside of Euro, I think Euro is probably the most hyped player that you bought, and you obviously paid the price for it. I think outside of that, like getting De Ligt, who's kind of down on his luck, you get a good deal for him. He could end up being, there's quite a lot of upside or potential to that being a good transfer for you. Mazraoui, clearly underrated. He's not a world beater, but he's also not crap. And I think in a lot of high level teams, he would fit in. Like, he wouldn't stand out as being useless, right? Like you could stick him into Man City team. I don't think he'd stand out as being crap in that team. I think he'd kind of get along. He'd be like an Ake, a Kanji. I know everyone's big on those guys, but what I'm saying is like he could end up being a really good system player for a really good team. So I don't think he's a bad buy at all. Agate clearly down on his luck after a bad year at PSG, but before that, don't forget everybody was all over his nuts thinking that he's going to be the best player ever. So you're getting him for a decent deal, right? He could end up being pretty helpful for you. It's a position that you need. So I think generally speaking, the players you've bought have filled the positions that you needed, and you haven't been rinsed for them, right? And they kind of fit the idea of a trajectory that you are kind of down in luck at the moment and you need to get back up there. Because if I saw you guys try and go out and bloody buy Osherman and this player and that player, as much as your fans would go absolutely nuts and be so happy about it, you would have spent like 400 million in a season, and you probably would have a lot of big egos that wouldn't be willing to listen to Ten Hag. What you've done now is lay the foundation, whether it's for Ten Hag or somebody else, for a bunch of players that don't have an ego because they've either been crap recently or they're not the most hyped players ever in the world, right? And that's exactly what you need. Because with Arteta, we had youngsters, we had players that weren't, so super hyped, like Ben White, Ramsdale. No one was singing them like they were going to be the best players ever, right? Everyone knew that they were coming from either a relegated crap team or we'd overpaid over the odds for them. Nobody was going wild about them. And that's perfect for a manager to come in and say, It's my way or the highway. Listen to me. Don't think that you're the dog's bollocks. So that's what I'm happy to see about Man United, and that's why I'd say B plus and not a B, because you need that. You need those personalities. You need people that are going to listen and are not going to think their shit don't stink.
Yeah, I agree. I saw Nicky Butt talk about how, these aren't superstars, these aren't the right signings, and I feel like it's the opposite. That's the opposite of what we needed, and I think it's been exactly what our problem has been. Like you've said, going for the big, overhyped, overpaid, overinflated ego players, and I don't get that vibe from any of the players that we've gotten so far. I feel like they're all going to be net positives for our team and our dressing room and our atmosphere around the club. So I'm happy. Yeah, like I said, despite the poor results, I give them a B.
And I'm so sick of that part, right? The Nicky Butts of the world and all the players from your treble-winning teams coming out and saying, "Oh, these aren't Man United signings." Yeah, because you're not treble-winning Man United anymore. You literally finished 8th. You were crap last season. You have no right to come out and say that you're going to get the best players in the world. So Nicky Butt, shut up and go away. Realise that Man United are crap right now and that you've got to build up from the foundation, right? Just like Sorrell at the beginning. Sorrell in the first 5-6 years wasn't buying bloody Andy Coles and this, that and the other, right? He was buying players that ended up becoming really good, even though people didn't think they were necessarily going to be. Same thing for Wenger. He wasn't, buying the best players in the world all the time. He bought players that were underrated, that were, going to become better than a lot of the world thought they were, and then turn them into absolute superstars. So I
that's
need
the last
Man United
stage for me.
legends to just shut the hell up. Let them do what they need to do, man.
And we know in modern football, the most successful teams are not teams really that are laden with Galacticos. We've tried that at Man United with the Ed Woodward era. It stank. We paid for overpaid players and superstars with huge egos and massive divas, and that were maybe just coming for the pay packet, and we suffered for it. And it's actually what's put us back all these years in our process of coming back up to being a top team. And you can see other teams build their squads in exactly this way, and you only see the sprinkle of superstardom, or the hype players come near the end.
After they've already been somewhat successful, where the manager can say,
exactly.
"I don't care if how good you are. You're coming into a title-winning team. Set yourself down."
Exactly. Look at. I know you guys haven't won anything yet, but look at how Arsenal have developed the team. Look how Liverpool developed the team. They only got Alisson and Van Dijk right at the end as the little sprinkle at the end. They built their squad on 30 million to 40 million pound signings or less before that. Even City, the majority of their signings are not 60, 70 million pound signings. There are a lot of 20, 30, 40 million pound signings in there that help build up the squad. And that's what we have to do. And that's what I feel like we were doing. Obviously, inflation means that you don't pay 20 or 30 anymore, really. You pay probably 40 or 50. But for me, that's still fine. It's better than going out there and spending 80 on a Maguire or a 90 on a Pogba, even though, I'm one of Pogba's defenders. This is the right way to go about it. So, respect to Nicky Butt and everything like that for his playing time. But, he was booted out of United probably for a couple of reasons. And maybe it was because he had this kind of idea. And it's not fit with modern football. Let's be real. That's maybe how you did things back in the old days, not now, mate. All right, so I've gone B, you've gone B plus. I can see a trend with these grades, but yeah, we're close by. We're close by. Let's go on to the overall winners then, John. Who are you going to give? These are for the Premier League, by the way, for all the listeners and the viewers. In the Premier League, who are you giving winners of the transfer window then?
I'm gonna go for Brighton, and it's the reason I say that is because I actually think, you know what? No, I'm going to change that. I'm going Villa, and I think Villa. I'm going for Villa because I thought that they were making some weird decisions, like in terms of getting rid of Diaby and. Some of their decisions I was thinking kind of going a bit sideways, right? Like,
Douglas Luiz, yeah.
Yeah, like getting rid of Douglas Luiz, getting in Onana and whatever else. But I actually think that their overall team is going to get better as a result, because I think they've unlocked an absolute gem in Morgan Rogers. I think John Duran's going to progress on now. Right, they could have gone and tried to get a backup striker or somebody else. I think John Duran looks like he's going to be a bit of a baller if Watkins is not firing. I think Amadou Onana might end up being the one that everyone was just like, why the hell didn't we buy him for that price? And then if you add on to it, Tielemans is turning back into a baller. Everyone kind of thought he was dead and buried for a while, but now he's turning back into an absolute baller. So I actually think they will play better. I don't know whether they'll finish higher. I very much doubt it's possible for them to finish higher than they were last season. But I think overall, maybe their team has got better. And I'm going to be a hipster with that. I'm going to be a hipster and say Aston Villa. There we go.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's that hipster. I like quite a few of their signings. I've obviously said I like Onana a lot. I think he'll be signing of the season. I think he started like an absolute house on fire. He's looked amazing.
Yeah.
Ian Maatson, I think, will eventually come in the team.
Yeah, Maatson looks good as well.
Yeah, Jaden Philogene, I think, will come into the team as well, and he looked obviously really good in the Championship. The reason why I haven't gone with them is there's just been some curious ones, because they obviously brought in Enzo Berenchia from Juventus, Illing Jr. from Juventus in that Luiz deal, and they've loaned both of them out. They brought back Cameron Archer from Sheffield United and literally sold him straight back out again to Southampton. So there's been some weird deals in it where I just feel like they might be a little bit short. But, I mean, they've started really well. And I think their season will, again, come down to a lot of injuries. And you'll have to see how they cope with Champions League. But I'll tell you what, if they finish 5th or 6th with that addition of Champions League, with, maybe some decisions to weaken the squad, losing Diaby and Luiz, they've done amazing.
Also, remember that they went out and got Ross Barkley as well, which I think is a weird one, but I think it could pay off in terms of depth and in terms of like having somebody that's going to come on and be a bit of a wizard after they've got injuries or everyone's tired. Because think about it, Ross Barkley was absolutely balling out last season as well. So I think they've got some good shouts in there.
Yeah, it's a good bit of experience as well, because I think they lack that a bit. So he could come in handy. So yeah, no, I hear you. I haven't gone for Villa though. I've gone for the other team in claret and blue, and I've gone for West Ham. So I wasn't sure about all of their deals. Kind of midway through, when everyone was getting on the West Ham train, full crew, go, Max Gilman, Somerville. Everyone was going wild about their signings very early on, but
yeah.
When I look at that full list of players and the players that they let go, I feel like they've really backed the manager to give him what he wants in terms of the team. And they've really given him a chance to try and move that style away from being as boring and drab as David Moyes had them being before. So, yeah, I really like the Kilman signing. I really like the Todibo signing. I think those two together in centre defence are going to end up being a really nice partnership. I think Wan-Bissaka's come in and started looking like bloody Cafu, so that's good for them. Somerville, I think, is a really decent winger that they've got from the Championship. I think he's shown when he was at Leeds, he had maybe some of the stardust to be able to perform in the Premier League. They've got Soler from PSG, who I think is a decent midfield option. That Guido Rodriguez from Betis for free, who's come into the starting lineups, look decent. I think for me, the only one where I know you are bigger on it than me is the full crew up front. I think it's a 50-50. Like it could bang, and to be honest, of the strikers they've signed, he probably has the best chance because he plays kind of the style of football that should require the least amount of adaptation for the Premier League. I feel like he's kind of born for the Premier League, but it just still might be too much of a tough task coming in at this age, and with a new manager and everything. We'll have to wait and see. But no, I like their overall squad building. I think they've done a good job, and to be honest, I'm just still massively high off them having Kudus and Bowen. Like, I think of those signings and just think, how are they going to complement Kudus and Bowen? And I think a lot of them will complement those guys, because Kudus was out here moving mad against Man City and trying to do it by himself. he was trying to Russ Westbrook it and just like give me the ball and let me do everything, and he almost pulled it off. So yeah, I like West Ham signing. So I'm going to go for West Ham for the overall winners. I'll jump in for this one then. The last section, I'll go for overall losers. I'm going to go for the Scassers, but not the red side, the blue side. I'm going to go for Everton. And yeah, a bit of it's personal, you know. They're moaning at us about how we're not stumping up the money for Branthwaite and basically twerking to try and sell one of their best youth products they've had in years, which is very sus behaviour from the fans, I will say. But just looking at their transfers, I can't remember the last time Everton did a good transfer. I've got to be honest. It just feels like they're like shopping in that, you know, that weird random aisle in Lidl, where they just pick up all kinds of random shit. Like, I look at some of the signings they've had and just go, what the hell are they thinking? Like, they've got Oriel Mangala from Lyon. He was at Nottingham Forest, didn't look like anything. Jack Harrison looks decent, but again, very uninspiring. Jesper Lindstrom from Napoli, I'm pretty sure he flopped there, makes no sense. Broja has had about 5 different loans at different clubs and hasn't done anything. Begovic, bloody hell, I didn't realise he's still playing. Iliman Ndiaye looks okay. The lad they bought from Marseille, used to play at Sheffield United. From their performances so far, he looks all right. And then Tim Orogbunam from Aston Villa's also looked decent. He's looked a bit like a B-Tech Amadou Onana in the recent games. So he looks okay, but I just don't see the vision and I don't see the plan, and everything just feels like, how are we going to avoid PSR? How are we going to just try and do some janky deals? And I feel a bit bad for Sean Dyche because, you know, I feel like as much as he doesn't play the most inspiring football, he's been absolutely screwed with that job. They haven't given him a bloody chance, and it stinks because that just overall club planning from them is poor, so poor. And yeah, like you predicted, I think in some of the predictions or kind of joked around that they're going to go down, you know, the season that they're moving into the new stadium. If they do, it's not on the players, it's not on the manager, it's totally on the leadership for how they've squad built this. Because I can't imagine Sean Dyche has planned some of this crap they've brought in. There's absolutely no chance. No chance. So I'm going Everton. What about you, mate?
So I'm going to leave out the crap. The very low level teams, because I think there are obviously some stinkers. I think, you know, I'm going to leave out Everton, and I'm going to look at the bigger, better teams, unfortunately. And I'm going to say Newcastle. And I know that this is probably going to come as like a weird one, because they obviously held on to Isak and they held on to Bruno G, which will kind of be the major worries for them for this season, right? Obviously, everybody was coming after them. But like some of the behavior that they had with like Guehi as well, like the way that all just flopped on them, and then like the Todibo stuff as well. I think they were after him, and then he ends up going to West Ham, Tosin as well. I think they've got worse. I think that in my opinion, if you look at that team, like that defense particularly, I know they've got a lot of injuries, but they should have been strengthening that team. And I know they've had issues with, you know, profitability rules and this, that, and the other. But there's way better ways that could have ended for them in terms of squad depth. Even if they were going to lose Bruno G or somebody amazing from that team, I think overall this was the window for them to really try and kick on a little bit, based off the fact that a lot of other teams were inactive or didn't really do too much, right? I think they could have come out of the back of this window saying that they were the winners of it if they had played their cards right. And I think the way that they went after certain players and the way it dragged on and then ended up kind of flopping is almost Liverpool-esque in certain ways, where they big up that they're going after this person, that person, and, you know,
hey Jude,
on.
hey,
yeah, exactly. They big up these players for 3, 4, 5 weeks and beyond, and then they end up with nothing, and it stinks, man. To be honest with you. And I'm also still angry at them because they didn't give us either Bruno G or Isak. So overall, losers have that.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, actually. I was thinking about Newcastle as an option because I was looking at their ins, and it was It was so uninspiring. Honestly, like I feel like it's probably even worse than Everton. I don't know, man, but it's just because I guess I've downgraded Everton because they've lost a few gems. They've lost the Onanas and stuff like that.
Well, I also think for Everton, it means that they will go down because of the players that they've lost and the fact that they haven't replaced them. With Newcastle, they're not going to go down. They're just not going to capitalise on a massive opportunity they had.
Yeah. I mean, Lewis Hall, that was kind of like a Raya deal that was done last season.
Yeah.
It's Vlachodimos for the bloody dodgy PSR transfers that was sold for like 30 million. He's a backup. Lloyd Kelly for free. John Ruddy for free. Some young striker,
Yakuba Minte as well, right? Who looks like he's actually going to ball up. And I'm taking that one back as well because I thought that was pure fraud. But he actually looks like he's really good. So they actually screwed that one up as well.
Yeah, they did. They absolutely screwed that up. And I feel like they could have sold someone else like Almiron or something else and kept Minter. I just feel like they've, and this might be because of us, and maybe Newcastle fans will get angry and feel like we're doing, main character syndrome stuff. But I do feel like the drama around Dan Ashworth and them not getting a new sporting director screwed them a bit because of that dragging on. And then I think they were going for Dougie Friedman. They were going for Richard Hughes to replace him, and they didn't get either. And then they ended up getting Paul Mitchell in the last knockings of that period before the window started. I don't think they planned properly. And it looks like it, because losing Minter might be an all-time stinker from them, and not getting Gahey might be an all-time stinker as well, and not having a backup for any of those guys. Because if they get a couple of injuries or Shah has another head loss, their defence is looking a bit smelly. And they got lucky against Tottenham. I'll be real, they got lucky.
They should have lost that game.
If Tottenham absolutely roasted the hell out of them in the second half, and if the youngsters had just spotted Son and played a ball to him, Son could have scored a couple of goals, because there was a bunch of times where they had like 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, where if you had a more composed wide player setting up Son, or if it was Son doing the setting up for like a Solanke, I reckon they would have won that game. It was just because Odebear looks a bit raw and he didn't make the right decisions, and Brennan Johnson's a two-pack of and that's the reason why they didn't take advantage. And then Ange's high line for life, mate, like screwed them, because it was one straight ball from Joelinton and they were done. It was ridiculous, like just completely unfair result really for Spurs, but typical.
Yeah.
And Newcastle got away with it. I think when they play some good teams, they're gonna get slapped up. Man. So yeah, I think they'll be all right though. They'll probably still finish above us, but they definitely had a better chance, and they kind of flopped it, I think. So yeah, I hear that. All right, so we're giving Man United B and B pluses for their transfer window. Arsenal C and C pluses. Both pluses coming from your side. And then overall winners, I've gone West Ham, you've gone Villa, I've gone overall losers, Everton, you've gone Newcastle. Let's see how it goes. We will also, in closer to, I guess, November, December, I think we'll do our review of our predictions, and we can have a few chances to try and tweak things after we've got through the international breaks and had some Champions League and European fixtures, because I'm sure I'll change a few, because already that Savio shout looks all-time smelly.
And my full crew shout is starting to look all-time smelly as well, so I might have to pull that one back in.
Yeah, that one's not looking good either. And I mean, Brentford as well. My God, I said they're going to go down, and they're playing amazing.
They're looking, and Buemo's cooking.
Bremo Wisa, yeah. So anyway, what a pod. Super long one. Bloody hell, that should keep you guys going over the international break. But yeah, a lot to get through, obviously, with the United performance and the Arsenal dubious stuff and transfer window coming to an end. But it's been a good one, Johns. Nice one, everyone. Take care.
Cheers, Ant. Cheers, everyone.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.